Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us this November 8th for our work session. Up first today, we have the 2022 Hagerstown Ice and Sports Complex Annual Report. Just today, we have Eric Dykey and Paul Sweeney. And Dan.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to make it short for me. I'm going to introduce them and they can do all the work. So we have Paul and Dan from the Hagerstown Ice Athletic or Amateur Athletic Association. And Dan is the general manager out at the ice rink. And invite them here to do their annual report, which you have a copy of. And I'll just turn it over to them and let them go at it.
Thank you.
Okay, ready? All right, just to familiarize yourself with me, I'm president of the Hagerstown Ice Amateur Athletic Association, which was formed back in 2014, and we manage the facility. So I've been involved with the ice rink since my son started playing hockey in 1997, so it's been a couple of years. I think the rink was built in 95 or 96, so it's been a while. Dan's been our maintenance manager and now the general manager of the facility, and does a really good job with taking care of the ice. And we have so many user groups. He manages the different user groups with, we only have one facility, so everybody wants to be on the ice all the time. So it's kind of a tough job. So I'm giving him an extra job today. He's going to be moving the thing, because I'm somewhat computer challenged. So these are some of our user groups. You can see in the upper left-hand corner we have the Hagerstown Kodiaks, which is a sled hockey team. They've been using the rink for what, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years now.
5 or 6 years.
Yeah. You can see that's our Learn to Skate program to the right of that. That's some of our adult hockey leagues. The lower left-hand corner is some of our Learn to Play hockey programs with instructors. The middle part of the screen is the Hagerstown figure skating communities, the Hagerstown Edge and ice skaters, and again there's some more adult hockey at the bottom. We have probably 8 user groups, and each user group is part of our board that helps manage the rink. So we learned a long time ago that it works a lot better if we get everybody involved that has skin in the game. So we are a nonprofit organization. Again, we were formed in 2014. We have all of the major user groups on our board, and we also have some at-large board members. Those are people that may not be part of a user group but have some expertise in different areas. Like our treasurer is an accountant, which makes things work a lot better. And we have several other members that are just good connections to have. This gives you an idea of our public skating revenue. You can see that last year, if you look at that graph chart, 2021, you see a dip there. That was during COVID. We were restricted as to how many people we could actually have in the rink at any one time. So obviously our public skate numbers went down, but last year they came right back up. So you can see that we're used a lot, and I think it's roughly $150,000 in revenue that we generated just from public skating. Overall, I think, I don't think it's on the list, but I'll tell you, I think we generate around $600,000 a year in revenue from all our different programs. Each one of the user groups buys the ice from us. We provide ice times, and all of the user groups participate in supporting the rink. So this is to give you an idea. You can see that we have quite a few adult hockey teams. We have 3 different leagues. We have what we call the AHL, which is the Hagerstown Adult Hockey League. There's 6 teams in that. We have 10 teams currently, I think, in the middle program, which is the Hagerstown Adult Rec League. And the 4 teams in the lower division, that's our newest league. We call it like our D League. That's for people that are adults that are just learning how to play hockey. So We also have an all-female travel team that's been part of, they're called the Mayhem. They've been part of our facility for at least 7 or 8 years, yeah. And I told you a little bit about the sled hockey team, which is run by a gentleman by the name of Mike Barnhart. Without him, I don't think we'd have that team. So we have over 500 adult hockey players registered. A lot of people think, well, you drive by the rink during the daytime, you don't see a whole lot of activity going on there. It's mainly in the evenings, but we have a lot of people that use the facility. So, youth teams, we have, currently have 7 teams in the Hagerstown Youth Hockey Association, which is a travel program. They play teams as far away as, I think, Northern Virginia, Eastern Maryland, all around the state. We have 2 high school teams. The Washington County North Stars is made up of all teams from Washington County High Schools. It's a hybrid team. We also have the West Virginia Vipers. They're primarily teams from Martinsburg area, but they're actually, I think they have more skaters in the West Virginia team than we currently have in the high school team. A little bit of background, my son played pretty much for all these teams. He came up at a really early age, played for the Hagerstown Youth Hockey Association, played for the North Stars, and now he's given back. He's actually the coach of the Hagerstown North Stars. He took over for Jamie Blackwood this year. So, we have developmental programs. Power skating is for pretty much every youth hockey player, teaches them skills, how to be able to change and move around. We have a Learn to Play hockey program, which is affiliated with the Washington Capitals. We are a Washington Capitals affiliated rink. It's an awesome program. It's an 8-week session. I think it costs around $250 per player. The Washington Capitals provide each player with equipment from head to toe. It doesn't cost them anything for that. They get 8 weeks of sessions. Usually the Caps send a couple of representatives out. I don't know if anybody's a hockey fan, but if you've ever watched a Capitals game, you've probably seen Alan May in the
broadcast?
Yeah, no, in the broadcast, but Craig Laughlin as well. They've come to the rink, and kids, I think the parents like it more because anyone that's watched the game, kids are just, who's this guy? But they skate really good, but who is he? But anyway, it's nice. And we have usually 2 to 3 of those sessions each year, and we typically have 30 brand-new kids playing each time we have that. So they're a really good feeding program. We figured out years ago that you're not going to just suddenly wait for people that played in Canada to show up in Hagerstown. So we have a lot of young kids. We're building from the bottom up, and all these kids have stayed around, not all of them, but a good many of them that are playing in our adult leagues at this point. So we've built a pretty good base of players, and we've talked about this before. We really could use a second sheet of ice, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But we also have, when the kids get done with the Learn to Play hockey program, they ask, where do we go? They're not ready to go to a travel program, so we have what's called the Junior Hammerheads program, which is a rec program every Saturday morning. Kids can go there and they can play with the equipment that they just got. And then we have a regular Hammerheads, which is a recreational youth program. I think we have 4 teams in that league right now. So we have well over 200 young players playing right now. So,
And that's just in our in-house numbers. That doesn't include the numbers that are in the travel program. Plus, also what's up here is we also have 2 brand-new middle school teams this year, too. So those numbers are actually a little
which
higher.
are, yeah. Okay, the figure skaters, we have 2 figure skating programs, the Hagerstown Edge Learn to Skate and the Hagerstown Edge Figure Skating Club. And we just did this, what was last year, the first time we did the Theater on Ice was added last year. We have over 400 kids that registered for the Learn to Skate program last year. Those kids could be figure skaters, could also be hockey players. You know, when somebody comes in that wants to play hockey and has never skated before, they need to learn the basics of skating. So a lot of those kids are, do both programs. Okay, so, I mean, our board, we meet once a month. We look at, what we've done, what we're planning to do. So we analyze what's going on. We make recommendations as to what we should do. All our board members serve 3-year terms. They're staggered. We have currently, I think, 15 members on our board. So about every 3 years, 5 of them kind of age out or they may stay. I've been president of the board since 2014. I'm still trying to figure out how I can get out of this, but hasn't happened yet. Dan threatens to leave if I ever do, so. But anyway, I love it, love doing it, so I'm gonna be there for as long as they want me. But the rink itself physically is in pretty good shape, but we're gonna talk a little bit about the system that we have is really getting towards the end of its lifespan, so we're gonna have to do something at some point. All of our bills are current. The only debt that we really have is the Zamboni, which we purchased back in 2018, 2017. It was a $125,000 purchase. I think we owe like maybe $25,000 on it at this point, so. We did have an emergency closure back in October to fix an ice cooling issue. Dan could probably expand on this a little bit, but we have something called, it's a closed system, or direct system, where everything runs through the system almost like a refrigerator. You have a compressor in the back, I'm gonna call that a chiller, and then we have pipes that run underneath the ice. And didn't know this, but we have somewhere over, I think, 6 miles of pipe running underneath the ice. And 7.5 miles? Okay, that's over 6. So, yeah, so the system holds Freon, and the capacity is roughly, I think, 4,900 pounds of Freon. And Freon, the type of Freon that we have in our system is something called R22, which is a really older design, and it's being phased out, and it's getting more and more expensive when we lose Freon and have to add it to the system. So just to give you an idea, we just put in 300 pounds of Freon about a week or so ago. That cost us $17,000 just for 300 pounds of Freon. Our system holds up to 4,900 pounds of Freon. So 300 pounds didn't fix the issue completely, but it did get us back to where it's freezing again. It's almost not unlike an air conditioner in your house. You know, when you have a leak and the air conditioner, the Freon's not in there any longer, it's not gonna do what you want it to do. So it's the same thing with ice. So, and again, it's a 25-year-old system, and we keep on putting Band-Aids on it, and we want to get to a point where we don't really have to do that anymore, so. One of the things that we've worked with you on is getting the new dehumidification system, and we had a ceiling installed a year or so ago, and we just purchased with your assistance, a brand-new dehumidifier. We're in the process of getting the venting up through this arena, and hopefully that'll be done in the next week or so, right?
That's the plan.
Okay. The reason why we had to do that was, again, Hagerstown gets very, very warm in the summertime, and when it gets very warm outside and is very cold on the inside, it creates condensation, which drew up in the top of the building and then just dripped down onto the ice, and it's not easy to skate around humps in the ice. And you can't just cut them out. You have to take them out a certain way. So if you take the Zamboni over it, it'll cut them off, but it'll tear up a big chunk of ice too. So it's made it almost impossible for us to paint the beams in the building because they're so wet in the summertime that it doesn't hold the paint. So you can see some of the things that we want to do is we worked with getting that system where when our ice did go out it was about a 2-week period, we used the roller hockey facility for our kids to practice on it, which is really nice to be able to do that. We do manage the times that people use that for the city. And the youth, whenever we have a tournament, whether it's a youth or an adult tournament, or even on the weekends when the youth teams play, a lot of teams come from outside the area, and they use a lot of the local hotels and bring a lot of revenue to the city in other ways. So, again, we'd love to add another sheet of ice, and we had plans for that a couple years ago, and don't want to blame everything on COVID, but that kind of stopped us in our tracks. We were ready to launch a campaign to try to raise funds and raise money, but that slowed us down. And we do have some plans drawn up for a second sheet of ice, but we have kind of a more immediate concern that we're worried about right now is the system that freezes the ice, because it's the only thing we can sell is the ice. Everything else goes away if we don't have it. So we're very concerned that it's a 25 to 27-year-old system, and we don't know what it's going to cost to replace it, but we're going to have to, I'm not talking about replacing the facility itself, but underneath the ice, we're going to need a whole new system. And it's not going to be a direct system like we have now, but it's not a fix that you can get done in a week or two. I would imagine, I mean, Dan could probably tell you a little bit more, but we're going to have to take the piping out from under. Thank God we have a sand base, so we don't have to tear up the concrete, but we'll have to take the piping out for that. We're going to have to replace the compressors in the back. It would be great if we could find something to run through the system, but with a direct system, everything runs through that. So when we go with, I'm going to show my ignorance, a non-direct system, we would have the compressors, the chillers in the back, and then we would have either brine or glycol running through the system to freeze the ice. Everything okay there?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay. But that would make it a lot easier in the future to do repair work or to fix the different parts of it, so. What our plans are is we're gonna, I know MS Johnson is involved with the dehumidification system right now, and they're gonna try to come up with some numbers for us, I think you said.
Yeah, I've asked MS Johnson to give us a budget number for the replacing the system for the ice, so we all have a better idea how much money we're talking about, you
Yeah,
know,
and-
$100, 100,000, or $1 million, we just have no idea at the moment, so.
And we're reaching out to several of our vendors that do that sort of work. We're gonna get some numbers put together as well to see what size compressor we need to handle that, you know, how much piping we're gonna need. But what our vision is, if we do have to replace it, we don't wanna have to replace it in the middle of hockey season. It would be something in the summertime, you know, when the ice is out normally anyway. So our vision would be to get something put together, and then if we said, okay, on July 1, we're gonna be out for 2 months, we don't even know what the time frame is yet, but whatever it is, have everything in hand, ready on July 1, we get it changed out, and then by the beginning of September, we're ready to go again. So,
Sounds good.
okay.
Do you guys have any questions then?
Find out how much it costs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Like
gonna,
I said, the R-22 is just an old type of system, it's just, you can't, it's not been made for a long time, you have to buy wherever you can find it. And so it's, well, you deal with cars, you know the same thing. It's, yeah, it's been a long time since they've used that, so it just tells you how old the system really is, so.
yeah, and we're having, the issue we're having right now is there is some clogging going on, right?
Yes.
And again, the pipes that run through the system are, how big around?
5/8.
5/8 of an inch, and again, just imagine 7.5, 7.5 miles of piping going down, and if there's just, you know, one little clog at one end, and the Freon can't get through it, you know, that area of the ice, and that's what's happened a couple of times over the last 3 years. We've had an area maybe 10 feet long and this wide that's not freezing, or it's getting wet, and it's okay when you're having like a learn-to-play hockey program or something with kids, you can kind of, or even a public skate, you can block it off. But it's not okay when you're playing a hockey game, because you can't, you know, just wall that off and have the players jump over it, you know, they may not see it coming, and, you know, so it creates a really unsafe environment. So We didn't want to have to take the ice out a couple of weeks ago. Believe me, Dan spent pretty much a week and, 2 weeks, I guess, there pretty much every day, you know, and his crew was fantastic at getting everything back up and running. And that's not something we want to do regularly, so we normally take the ice out in the summertime, but this is something that really needs to be addressed.
Two major factors is the type of refrigerant, the R22. Right now, there's a limit on how much you can buy, so there's 4 of us that was able to buy 3 30-pound tanks, and that's all I could get at the moment. And the compressor system itself, they stopped manufacturing those particular models 15 years ago, and I'm having a very hard time finding parts. I just bought some parts that just finally actually showed up today. 3 years ago, I was able to get them for around $400 some, and $1,700, from 3 different vendors getting them this week. So if something something very bad happens, I ain't gonna be able to do much about it at this point.
Well, thank you for making it work in the time being,
Yeah.
and we'll look forward to seeing what comes back.
Yeah,
We'll see you again.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, this yours.
And up next, we have the A-2022-02 annexation of lands of GVP Hagerstown, owner LLC to Western Maryland Parkway.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Kathy.
So we had the public hearing for the annexation last month, and no one from the general public spoke at the hearing, but we did hear from the applicants, and they made a request for the council's consideration, and I need to put my glasses on to read this for you. The request was to either, 2 options, because they have not yet found a tenant for the building, so they're not as far along in the permitting process as they would like, so they're still working on their shell permit. So the request would be to delay the effective date of the annexation, either as delay the effective date until December 31st, 2023, or delay the effective date of the annexation until the use and occupancy certificate is issued for the shell permit, or July 1, 2023, whichever comes first. And so I gave you a little background in the memo, and then as you contemplate what's been requested, just a few things for you to consider. This annexation involved a raw piece of ground adjacent to our corporate boundaries, and the annexation policy requires such properties to annex as a condition of receipt of water. So the fact that we've already granted a delay to start the process is pretty extraordinary. 2, the project has already been issued a shell permit from the county, and per our annexation agreement, any permits that are issued before the property is in the city would continue under the county until the permit was closed out. So that shell permit, no matter what happens, would finish up with the county, would not switch over to us if the annexation occurred before that was finished. Just something to think about. And then also the impact of the city of granting the requested delay either to July 1, 2023 or December 31, 2023 means that it would further extend delay of the property being on the city tax rolls until July 1, 2024. Just the way SDAT does things. If it's not in by March or so, then it's the next year. So that's just things for you to think about as you contemplate their request to delay the effective date of the annexation until either the end of next year or when they get the UNO on the shell permit, or July 1, 2023, whichever comes first. And if you had any further questions for them, the owners and their rep are here today.
When you get to UNO, that closes down the county.
For the shell, yeah. The next stage in permitting would be to get the tenant fit-out permit, but that'll happen when the tenant comes. But if the tenant fit-out permit was received from the county before the effective date, then that would also continue with the county. It's just they do not have it.
They annex with us.
Right, any permit that they have before the effective date would continue with the county. They just, at this
So-
point, don't have the tenant fit out because they don't have a tenant.
Right, if the even if we postpone the annexation to July 1 of 2023, it still will be on the tax rolls to July 1, 2024.
Right.
So either way.
Either way,
Mm-hmm.
right.
I'm good with number 2. And in case something would happen, then they could come in and ask, for postponement until December 31st.
Yeah.
But I think we ought to strive for July 1st.
I agree.
Two?
Two.
Fine with two.
Yeah.
Okay, we can have the resolution documents modified so that it could be ready for this month's vote.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Item CB, Hagerstown Financial Incentive Agreement. It's like the Doug show from here on out.
Oh, Doug, and Doug.
So this is the MCB Kerwood Development Financial Incentive Agreement. A little bit of background of the project is MCB Hagerstown is constructing a 1.9 million square feet of speculative industrial development. The capital investment is expected to be in the $140 million range for this project and create between 1,500 to 2,000 jobs. The site is currently not in the enterprise zone, but it is under consideration by Maryland Department of Commerce currently. The financial incentive agreement terms that I'll mention here in a moment are not dissimilar from the county's job creation and capital investment real property tax credit program, of which the county is expected to provide roughly $12 million in tax incentives through the utilization of the program based on a set of parameters. So the financial incentive agreement business points are the total collective incentive shall not exceed $625,000 in grant back equal to city permit fees paid. Building 1 would have $425,000 in grant back, and Building 2 would have $200,000 of grant back. The grant funds will be paid within 60 days of the certificate of occupancy for the shell building, but not paid before January 1 of '23 for either of the building phases. The offer cannot be combined with the enterprise zone. Should that designation become available, the developer will have the option to proceed with either the financial incentive agreement or the enterprise zone at the developer's option. Any monetary distribution or budget consideration incentive will be refunded to the city within 90 days of enterprise zone certification. The development must cause a minimal capital investment and job creation as following the Washington County Job Creation and Capital Investment Real Property Tax Credit Program as defined as Section 4C, a minimum of $10 million of capital investment for each of the buildings, and a creation of 100 new permanent full-time positions for each of the buildings. This incentive will be negated if MCB Hagerstown LLC seeks and achieves an appeal of property tax assessment for submission of the job certification report. Phase 1 of the construction would, with the use and occupancy permit, would be by December 31st, 24, and Phase 2 would follow the same as December 31st, 24. Phase 1's tenant must be occupied by June 30th of 25. Phase 2 tenant must be occupied by June 30th, 25. And then MCB Hagerstown LLC must provide that job certification report by the end of 2025. If either of the buildings are unable to create 100 new permanent full-time positions, the incentive will be prorated to the positions filled out of the 100, and reimbursed for the incentive will be required within 90 days of that date. And as with any of our financial incentive agreements, if the conditions are not met, any granted funds must be paid to the city of Hagerstown.
Yeah, I'm good.
Sounds
You
awesome.
good? Sounds awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, we have the review of lease for Maryland Watchworks.
So Maryland Watchworks is a current tenant of the city of Hagerstown. They're leasing 2,000 square feet at B3 at 14 North Potomac Street, which is also known as the Elizabeth Hager Center. They began leasing from the city in April 1st of 2020. They currently are paying $2,000 a month in rent. Previously, we included a termination clause for expansion of the business, allowing 90 days notice without penalty. The clause required the tenant to expand to a minimum of 5,500 square feet or more. The initial term of this lease expires at the end of March in 2023, so March 31st. Recently, Maryland Watchworks has requested that expansion of the 5,500 square feet to be lowered to 2,000 square feet. They're entertaining a new space that is inside the city limits. So we're requesting an amendment to their lease to allow that Section 7 to be lowered from 5,500 square feet to 2,000 square feet. enabling to have a little flexibility in finding a new location in the city.
You guys okay with that?
Do we know where, well, hang on a second, do we know where they're looking at?
They're looking in the downtown.
That's all we know.
They're
He
undergoing
knows, but-
lease negotiations right now, so I don't know if I
Yeah.
want to disclose location, but it is a very close location to where they're at right now. But we do have an idea of where they're looking
And
to
that'll
locate.
be with a, that's not a city-owned building that they're looking at.
Correct. It would be a private owner.
Well, I don't want to be in direct conflict with a private property owner trying to lease a space.
Well, yeah, me either.
You guys good?
So you're saying yes?
Yes?
Yes.
Takesha?
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Bob, anything else to add?
Again, I hate to be in direct competition with a private property owner trying to lease a space, that's all.
That's why we're doing this, so they can.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Lastly, a review of letter of intent with the State Department of Labor and Education.
So this is another current tenant. The Department of Labor is currently leasing space from the city at 2 to 6 North Potomac, again in the Elizabeth Hager Center. They're currently leasing 11,140 square feet. The current lease runs through January 31st, 2023, and they're currently paying $167,100 per year for that space. The state's currently looking to consolidate both the Department of Labor and the Division of Rehabilitation Services, DOORS, which is part of the Department of Education, into that same location at 2 to 6 North Potomac. So DOORS has asked for additional office space and accessible features on the first floor of the Elizabeth Hager Center, and I've included a concept in your packets. So they've requested architectural drawings without a guarantee of a lease in place, and staff have asked for a letter of intent to be executed in advance of proceeding with this service. Some business points of this letter of intent include the lease term would be for 10 years. The new rent rate would be about $15.50. City will pay for the architectural engineering services, and these fees will be recouped over the first year of the lease as an additional rent. The tenant will pay for the build-out of requests from the Department of General Services concept drawing. That amount is not expected to exceed $200,000. And if no lease is materialized by January 31st of 2023, the cost of services paid by the city for architecture and engineering services will be reimbursed by the state within 30 days of the request. And this letter of intent does include that binding effect for the cost of services that are paid, which is not traditional from a typical letter of intent.
You guys, any questions? Are you good with it?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Thank you.
Good job.
City Administrator,
Nothing tonight, Mayor, thanks.
Councilmember Martinez,
Nothing tonight, Mayor, thanks.
Councilmember Burnett.
It's election day. Make sure you cast your vote, return your mail-in ballot
I had no
by 8
idea.
PM tonight, 8 PM. Vote.
Vote early, vote often? Is that how we're doing
Every
it?
2 years,
Sounds
man,
like
every
a
2 years.
Councilmember Perchi.
I'll just be happy when it's over and I stop getting alerts.
For the election?
Amen.
They must not know my phone numbers, I don't get
Well,
it.
they know
I'll make sure
mine.
they get it.
That's okay, I've already voted, so.
Yes,
Glad to
if
be
you,
with you.
if you,
Yes.
if you have not voted, you have 3.5 hours.
That's right,
Get out there and get it done.
Yep.
Get it done.
yep.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Glad to see you guys again.
Yeah.
See you
Welcome
then.
back, Shelby.
Yes.
Shelby.
Welcome,
Yes.
Shelby.
Yes. Shelby is back. Not visiting.
Okay. I have 2 letters of support, both from DHCD, one for the Holly Building and one for Cosner Building Services. Are you guys okay with both of
I'm
these?
good with both.
Yes.
All right. The only other thing, this Veterans Day is coming up. Morris Frock is having a ceremony 10:30 on Friday.
Supposed to rain, wear your wet gear.
Oh, like hard. So,
Really?
yeah.
Oh, it is?
It is.
Ew.
It's that
Okay.
system coming through.
The last thing I have was last weekend was the Legit Annual Conference, Local Government Insurance Trust, and I just wanted to give it up for Captain Vic Murray of the Hagerstown Fire Department, who presented on telematics in the fire trucks, and it was awesome. It went over really well, and he represented Hagerstown in our fire department great. So, thank you for that. With that, get out and vote. We're adjourned.
Cool.